Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be about the shaky head, so go ahead and stay around. So first off, the shaky head is a pretty versatile way to fish. Typically, it's associated with finesse fishing, but you can still power fish this technique. So here I have two different sizes, the two primary sizes I fish. I like a 1/2 ounce for my power fishing applications, and then I like no lighter than a 3/16 for my finesse fishing applications. Now, we'll get into how to fish these later, and there is when I'll go over the weight more so. But you can fish many different types of baits. Primarily, I like to stick to a worm. But this is what the shaky head is. So you can fish the shaky head in a variety of places. Two places where they really stand out are on ledges, offshore, and brush piles in the shallows, and also offshore too. Now, the shaky head is such a versatile deal because it's still fairly weedless. It's a bottom contact bait. Pretty much anywhere you can fish a jig, you can also put a shaky head, because really all it is a way to Texas rig a soft plastic on a jig head that makes it stand straight up without a skirt. Although if you wanted to, you could probably figure out a way to get a skirt on this. So how to fish a shaky head. Shaky heads are pretty simple to fish in my opinion. It's pretty much in the name. You just kind of shake it. And I do it very lightly a lot of the time, especially on my finesse applications. I might get a little bit more aggressive with my heavier jig, or my heavier shaky head jig, just because I can. And I can still keep a good bottom contact. I'm not pulling it up. But it's normally just real light like that. I'm just kind of giving it little, not really hopping it. I'm just kind of giving the rod just little shakes, little pops. And the bait really shouldn't be going much more than that, really. It should stay pretty close to the bottom. And that worm tail it will be up like this, and it should be just doing this. It should just be going crazy like that. With a ribbon tail worm, you can get a little bit more. I like to hop those a little. I'm not quite just barely shaking it, which on a long cast you're gonna have to exaggerate a little bit more. But I will actually give a ribbon tail worm a chance to fall. But as you've seen with the other baits I'm using, there really isn't any action on the fall. They're just a straight dive down. So those, they don't need anything on the fall unless they're hitting it on the fall. But if that's the case, you know, might want to switch to a Carolina rig, or maybe you should throw on the ribbon tail worm, wacky rig, drop shot, something like that if they're hitting on the fall. And that's across the board, even up shallow. If they're biting on the fall, a shaky head probably isn't the best thing, because it's always on the bottom. It's not really leaving the bottom. You're not hopping it up and down a couple feet or a foot or two like a jig. You're really just, you know, it's coming off maybe 2-3 inches, not a whole lot. So like I mentioned before, I like to throw two different weights of shaky heads. A 3/16 for my finesse applications, and a 1/2 or 5/8 for my power fishing applications. Now, whenever I do switch up gear quite a bit. So we'll start out with the finesse, and finesse I'm always throwing on a spinning rod. I throw 10-pound braid to an 8-pound fluorocarbon leader. Typically the leader is pretty long, kind of depends on, you know, exactly what I'm doing. It may have a leader on there when I was drop shotting, so it might be 10-15 foot, or it just could be just a regular leader for maybe wacky rigs that's maybe 5 foot or so. That doesn't really matter that much, but this is finesse, this is lighter line, fluorocarbon, spinning tackle to help out with the lighter weights. Now, when it comes to any shaky head, I prefer a a screw lock type. I really have a lot better luck with the screw lock. I feel like they do a much better job. I prefer an EWG style when I can get to it. If I can't in a finesse, it's not the end of the world. I'll talk a little bit more about the EWG style hook when I get into power fishing. So now for the power fishing, I like a half or a 5/8. I'm throwing this on a bait casting setup, and this is normally being thrown not quite on my jig rod, maybe more on my Texas rig rod. You know, usually a 7.3, 7.6, something in there. Heavy to medium heavy's fine. If you have a football head jig rod or just a light jig rod, these work great. I wouldn't exactly throw this on a flipping stick. You know, I prefer, like I said, that 7.3, 7.6. If you're fishing braid to leader, it kind of helps with keeping the knot out of the line guides with a longer rod. But like I said before, 7.3, 7.6, medium heavy or heavy, doesn't really matter too much. Now, one thing for my power fishing shaky heads that is a must, like I mentioned before, is the EWG style hook. The reason for that is because a lot of times when I'm fishing the heavier shaky head, I'm usually offshore, and I'm primarily always using a heavy weight to get down there quicker and to maintain better bottom contact in, say, 15 or 20, 25, 30 foot of water. Now, the reason that EWG is so important to me is the same reason, if you've seen my football head jig video, which I'll also put up here, is normally you're casting these as far as you can, and you're fishing it along a ledge or along a point or over a point or something like that. You're already 20 foot down into the water, and you're bombing it as far as you can get it. So whenever you get the fish on, you're normally fighting them for a long ways. So having the EWG, it will keep fish on a lot better than a standard round bend. So if I can put just a little bit more odd in my favor, I take it when I can. It's hard to find a good shaky head sometimes for me. You can get them at Riot. They have a round bend, and those are perfectly fine for me on my finesse applications. You can get by, you can totally do it. I've fished a round bend. As you can see, this is my heavier. This is a half. I've fished this for a lot of years. I'm just now finally getting a one with an EWG track down that I actually like. Also with these, it's important to keep your hook sharp, because you're either fishing it on spinning tackle, which typically doesn't have a lot of backbone. So if you have a dull hook or even just a semi-sharp hook, sometimes you can have problems getting the hook penetration. That was one of my main problems. Now I use a medium heavy spinning rod. It's hard to find like a 610 medium heavy fast. For some reason that's really hard to find, but that's what I prefer for my finesse. But like I said, a medium heavy, a heavy's kind of overkill. I prefer a medium heavy. Whatever your football jig rod should work for this 100%. It should completely kind of cross over, because my football head jig rod is a 7.3 to 7.4. I've usually got 20 pound, 17 pound fluorocarbon. You know, it's usually a 7 to 1. I don't go over 7. I don't like the heavier reel or the faster reels. 7 is my limit. If you guys want, I can make a video going over gear ratios, and I can kind of go into depth of why I don't like anything faster. But just remember, sharp hooks are a must, because you're either fishing on a medium power spinning rod if you don't have a medium heavy, and typically spinning rods don't have the most backbone in them. So hook penetration, you can really help out by making sure your hooks are sharp. And then on the long casts way out there on fluorocarbon or copolymer or even monofilament, Um, you know, you're gonna have some stretch. Even fluorocarbon does stretch some, not a lot, but some, and it really does get exaggerated after or over a very long cast. So sharp hooks are a must for me, same way as the football jig, because I'm basically fishing these in the same exact way I am a football head jig, just instead of dragging it, I'm doing something a little bit different, but it doesn't really change. So here are the main baits that I like to throw on a shaky head. The first one, and my favorite, is the probe. Any kind of straight tail worm, I prefer the probe from Riot. These have been a great shaky head bait for me. These types of worms here are my number one go-to. Next, my number two is a large ribbon tail worm. This is a 10.5 inch zoom old monster worm. This is in Tequila Sunrise. I don't throw these on a small shaky head. I throw these when I'm offshore, typically on a ledge or a extended point, and I usually like to throw this on my biggest shaky heads. Next is going to be probably the most common, besides the straight tail worm, is going to be any kind of Senko or stick bait. This, I believe, is just a cheap cream from Walmart. They usually don't last real long, so I don't spend a whole bunch of money on them. But a stick bait is also a good option. Whenever I like to throw a stick bait, I prefer to throw the Riot baton. This is my favorite to throw on there. This has been a great worm, or a great stick bait to put on a shaky head. If you've seen my wacky rig video, which I will put right up here, you'll see another place that I really like to use this worm. Then lastly, another great worm to fish it on, which is also a straight tail worm, but the Synth from Riot. Now, this primarily is used for drop shots in my boat, but these can be used for shaky heads as well. I just feel like the probe really shines on a shaky head, and this really shines on a drop shot. Although you can switch roles and be just as successful. Alright guys, thanks for sticking around. If you liked any of the baits in this video, these Riot baits here, the probe, the baton, and the Synth, you can go check those out on riotbaits.com. I'll leave my discount code for 15% off your order down in the description below. I might also try and put it here. I'm not sure if I can or not, but just know that that's pretty much what I use for shaky heads. I try and keep them simple. You can finesse them, you can power fish them, you can throw several types of different baits. You can get as crazy as you want. If you want to throw a beaver, if you've got a craw also works really good. If you don't really want to throw a ribbon tail worm and they're hitting on the fall, try throwing a craw on and letting that fall and kind of hop it around. You know, that's also a good option. You can throw beavers, craws, whatever else you got. You could probably even throw a swim bait on it and get something. Shaky head's pretty versatile, does a lot. It's not real picky. It seems to work all the time, anywhere. So, thanks guys. God bless.